This video is designed to introduce you to a concept known as variables. This is for Computer Science, A-Level, Year 1 and Programming Part 1. A variable is an area of storage in memory. We give it a meaningful identifier, which an identifier just means a name. A value is stored inside a variable. So that's a key definition for a variable. We can think of identifier in terms of, we might have a person in the class, they might be called Fred Bloggs, so the identifier is Fred. It's a way of identifying that individual. We tend to use this term in programming much more than just name, so try to use identifier. So we have an identifier for a variable, an identifier for a subsection of code, and you could even say this actual program has a particular identifier, which means the name of the program. So as you say, it's an area of storage in memory, and memory that is stored in would be our RAM, random access memory. So while the program is running, it uses an area of memory to store data inside. When we do programming, we have to store some data. Examples of data, we might be storing Bob, or the number 30, which might be the score that Bob got on the test. You might store true or false. So, has submitted work is true or false. It might be a single letter or a decimal number. The important thing with a variable, it does what it suggests. Variables can change, and when they change is important. They change at runtime. So this runtime is key there. If we think of variables as boxes, so it's like a box that we can put something inside. The box can only hold one thing, basically. So we can see this top box here. We've stored the number 34 inside it. 34 is the value. If we give the box a name, for example number 1, then number 1 is this box's identifier. Think of the box as a variable. So number 1 holds the value 34. I've got a second box here, and let's call this number 2 as its identifier, and I'm going to put number 12 into that box. So therefore we can say 12 has been assigned to identify number 2. We therefore have two variables. Our first program, we might want to add up two numbers together to give us a total. So we might want to take 34, add it to 12, and that will give us a total. Therefore, we use a third box, a third variable, and it's this one. We might give the identifier total. You could then say we add these two together and we assign the value to the total. The total would then contain the number 46. So in a simple addition program, we have three different items of data, three variables. Each variable has a specific purpose. It's designed to hold a specific type of data, and that's why we give it an identifier. For example, we might have a variable to hold the person's age, so therefore we would call that age or person's age. That variable wouldn't be used to also store the number of pets the person's got, or their shoe size, or their height. We have each variable for a specific purpose. If we wanted to store the number of pets, we'd have another variable. If we wanted the shoe size, a further variable, a first name, another variable, a surname, a middle name. So for every item of data, we have a different variable. This is an example of what we call pseudocode. So pseudocode shows us a piece of code not in any particular programming language. So it is written in a way that it's designed. A programmer can take this up and easily turn this into code. This is an example of a program that converts centimeters into inches. Have a think for a minute. How many variables would we need for this program? If you said 2, you were correct. So one variable for centimeters and one for inches. We can see the variables here and here. The idea is that we're getting the user to enter the centimetres. So we might say the user enters 1 centimetre. The inches is then assigned 1 times 2.54. So inches will now contain 2.54. And it then outputs 2.54. If we ran the program again, we could enter 2. And inches will be assigned 2 times 2.54, which will give us 5.08. And it outputs 5.08. That is something we can quite easily turn into programming code. Here is some more example pseudocode for working out how old somebody will be the following year. So you might enter 16. Your age next year will be 16 plus 1, so this time next year you will be 17. How many variables do we need? If you said 2, then you are correct. 1 for age and 1 for age next year. So that's what a variable is, and that's what it does. And there's some examples of some code, pseudocode, with the variables in them. Now, one important factor is that variables must all have data types. This tells the programming language what kind of data values can be stored. Obviously, for an age, we wouldn't want to put Bob in an age, and in some cases, we might want a whole number rather than decimal numbers. So we need to be careful what data types to use. They all take up a different amount of memory as well. That is something we can get to at a later date. But where possible, you try to save memory. An integer. An integer is a whole number. This includes natural numbers, and examples of those: 1, 23, minus 4, including 0. So an integer, a whole number, if you think back to number systems, includes natural number. Could be used for someone's age, number of pets, the month number, the day of the month, the year. We've got a single. A single is a decimal number. So there's some examples you can see on the screen here. Now this is a real number, is another name for a single, and this can include rational numbers, and to some extent rounded. You can include some irrational numbers as long as they're rounded. These can be used for averages, measurements, weights, temperature, anything that might require a decimal number. There's a char. A char is a single character, any letter, number or symbol. Could be used in menu options. Do you wish to continue? Y or N. Put the initial of your name, D. Select an option, A, B, C. So if you want a single character, you can use a char. That saves storage space. A string. A string is a series of characters, alphanumeric, so they can contain numbers, letters, symbols. So we've got examples there: Bob, car registration, postcode, telephone number. Telephone number is an important one. It's not something that would class as a whole number, because if we put it as a whole number, it would lose the 0. It wouldn't have the space. To keep the leading 0, it must be stored as a string. We don't want to add people's phone numbers together or multiply them, so we don't treat it as a number, we treat it as a series of characters. Boolean. Boolean can have one of two values. It's either true or false. The number is valid. True. Today is sunny. False. Short. Short is another take on an integer. It holds whole numbers, but within a limited range from minus 32,768 up to 32,767. Useful to use short if you're looking at saving on memory use and storage space. Double stores larger decimal place numbers if you require billions and trillions. And the last important one is how we tell VB that a variable exists. In VB we have to use the word dim followed by the identifier as data type. Have a look below at these. Pause the video now, and here is an example piece of code in VB. So going back to the declaring variables, just had a look through these. When we are programming, looking back at them previous examples, we had to explain to Visual Basic or any programming language what variables we're going to use. The programming language doesn't know until we use them. This word dim means that that variable is going to exist. It means dimension. Really create. Create a variable, dimension a variable with this identifier as this particular data type. Examples. Dim age is an integer. That tells VB that we've now got a variable called age, we've got a box in memory, we're calling it age as its identifier, and we're going to put a whole number inside it. This is declaring a variable as cm as the identifier, and we're going to be able to put decimal numbers in it. Inches is going to be able to put decimal numbers in it. My name is its identifier. This is now a box in memory that we can put letters, numbers, alphanumeric characters. Answer, we're looking for a single letter. Valid can only be true or false. As we looked at here is an example piece of code in Visual Basic. We've told VB that age exists as a whole number. This is saying console.writeLine enter your age, which will display a message to the user to enter their age, and this assigns it whatever the user enters on the console to that variable. So in this video we've covered variables, what they are, different data types, definition, how they are used, with a specific reference to Visual Basic.